Are the Rams finally getting close to signing that big-name player on the defensive side of the ball?
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Your team every single day. What more could you ask for? Your team every single day. That's the way that it works. Okay, my name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking out Locked On Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at Travis Rogers. Not only do I host Locked On Rams, I also do the Rams pregame show, postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN LA 710. Also host the Travis and Sliwa show right here in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. each and every Monday through Friday. So coming up on today's pod, I want to talk about the possibility of Jimmy G actually maybe not leaving the division, staying in San Francisco with the Niners, what that means for the Rams. Plus, lots of good news for the Rams so far this offseason about some of the players that they've acquired, some of the guys that they've managed to keep, but it's not all good news for one player in particular. Maybe he might have wanted to see a couple of guys go down the road. We'll get into that coming up in just a bit, but let's start with the news on the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about Bobby Wagner. We talked about it on Locked On Rams not that long ago about the mutual interest that seemed to exist between the former Seahawks linebacker and the Rams. The Rams obviously very, very familiar with him, having competed against him in the NFC West for the last several years. And Bobby Wagner, of course, is a very good football player who I'm sure is looking to win a bunch of games. I'm sure he's looking to make a little money. Of course, who wouldn't be? And let's not discount the possibility of maybe kind of sticking it to the guy that said, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction. It's a very powerful motivator that you don't want me? Okay, I'll show you what you're missing out on. There are reports this week, and maybe it could be done as soon as today, maybe this weekend, maybe early next week, but that there is mutual interest between both Bobby Wagner and the Rams. That Les Snead has talked about how he and the coaches have looked at some film to see whether or not he would be a good fit here. Let me just kind of cut to the chase. Let me spoil the surprise. Bobby Wagner is going to be a good fit pretty much wherever he goes. Good football players are good football players are good football players. I know that there's a lot to do with fit and scheme and those sorts of things, but what Bobby Wagner brings to the team, I think would be very, very important and very, very useful, especially in light of Von Miller going to Buffalo. So the fit seems to be pretty obvious. The fit seems to be something that the Rams need. You look at the linebacking core that they have right now, and you've got guys like Ernest Jones, you've got Trayvon Howard, you've got a couple of guys there that are players. They're serviceable. They're certainly guys that you can go into a season and feel pretty good about. Ernest Jones in particular, I think that he kind of really came along pretty nicely last year as one of their draft picks. We'll talk about one of the draft picks that maybe did not work out quite like that. But Bobby Wagner is not Von Miller, certainly, but he's a really good football player and somebody that would make your team much better. I think the part of this that they need to work out is the money, right? Whether or not there's enough for the Rams to give him, whether or not that's enough to make him want to stay in LA. Keep in mind that he's from LA. I think that's part of the equation as well. The biggest part of it to me is the revenge factor, right? Think about it. If you worked somewhere for a very long time and delivered a performance at a very high level for a very long time, and it got to the point where the company's kind of deciding, you know what, we're going to make a different thing. We're going to go sell a different thing. We need a different guy to go sell it. We're good. You can move it on down the line. And you're thinking, wait, I was pretty good for you. I did some things for you that not a lot of people were able to do. Really? This is how this is going to come to an end. And they kind of hem and haw at the end. And okay, I get it. It's pro sports, and feelings are probably down the priority list of things that organizations consider when they're making these moves. We'll talk about Robert Woods coming up because I think the Rams did consider his feelings when they made the decision to send him to Tennessee. They let him get involved in that decision. And look, here's the difference. I'll get into it right now. When you treat your players well, and I think that the Rams did right by Robert Woods. And by that, I mean, when they knew that they needed to move him, when they decided, okay, we have Allen Robinson, we're still trying to sign OBJ, we've got Cooper Kupp, we've got Van Jefferson. We have too many guys for the same spot. We need to move somebody, and Robert Woods is the guy that we're going to move. They went to him and said, where do you want to go? You know, Robert Woods would have had a lot of options to figure out where it is that he wanted to go. He's a very good football player. And he looked around and he saw Tennessee and said, I'd like to go there. I think that's a good fit for me. Well, where is he? He's in Tennessee. They worked it out. So look, these guys all talk to each other. They all communicate. So when it comes up again, when somebody says when there's another player in the league knocking around, deciding where he wants to go, and they pick up the phone and they say to Robert Woods, say, hey, I'm thinking about the Rams. What do you think about that? I know you spent some time there. Did you enjoy your time? Yeah, we won a bunch of games. What do you think about Sean McVay? That dude knows what he's doing. That guy is on top of things. They treat you right? Yeah, they did. Yeah, they ultimately they had to move on from me, but when it was time to move on, they treated me right. That's a pretty powerful message back to that, potential player. What do you think the message is about Seattle? What do you think the message is about Pete Carroll or John Schneider or the guys that are up in Seattle making the decisions for the Seahawks? What do you think Bobby Wagner would say about that? And I'm not saying that you can't make some tough decisions. You are. And I'm not going to say that there aren't going to be some guys that have some hard feelings as they go down the road. There always will be. You're telling somebody, I don't want you here anymore. I get it. But there's a way to do it, and there's another way to do it. And the way that the Rams did it is probably the best possible scenario. And then there's we're going to move on from you. And now all of a sudden you put a guy in, and this is the Bobby Wagner part of this, which is I'll show you. Okay, you don't think I got enough left to do what you want to do? Not only am I going to go do it, I'm going to go do it against you a couple of times a year. I'm going to go do it, and you and your fans and the organization and the coaches and everyone else is going to see me terrorize your team twice a season. Look, the Rams already have pretty good fortune against the Seahawks, have for the last several years. Even when the Rams weren't a very good team, they still had pretty good luck against the Seattle Seahawks. So this is just a no-brainer for me as I'm looking at Bobby Wagner. Now, maybe somebody else comes in heavy with some money, but the fact that here we are, it's getting towards the end of March. Free agency has been open now for the better part of a week and a half, 2 weeks, and Bobby Wagner is still available. The Rams still have a need. He's in Los Angeles. Reportedly, they're getting ready to discuss whether or not this is a good fit. I think this is going to come together, and I think it could come together fairly quickly because this is the sort of fit that when you get him in the building, when he talks to the other guys, when he hears from Coach McVay, when you hear from Raheem Morris, when you talk to Les Snead, when you're just in the building around the defending Super Bowl champions and the buzz that comes along with that, I think that's a pretty powerful selling point. I would not be surprised if Bobby Wagner is a Ram by the time the end of the weekend. By the time we come back on Monday on Locked On Rams, if we're not talking about acquiring a very, very good football player. Okay, so we talked about the good news. We talked about doing guys right. We talked about Robert Woods being in Tennessee. Kind of brings us to the next thing that I want to get into, which is what do you do with Tutu Atwell and why is he here in the first place? Because he had some things to say about how he wanted to show everybody wrong coming into this next season. We will get into that next. But let's talk about BetOnline before we do that. How are those tournament games going, right? How about now, all of a sudden, we got a couple of number one seeds that are out. It's the college basketball tournament. There's not a better time of year when it comes to kind of getting into all this. The latest odds, the contests, the player props. BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. Buy Gonzaga, buy Arizona, right? Maybe if you were looking at the odds, you knew these things. You knew you could move around a little bit. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. Maybe you're not a basketball guy. I get it. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs that are non-basketball related, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today, use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making the Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL as well. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking out Locked On Rams, your team every day. Don't forget, right in that upper hand corner, that little check mark, hit it. There you go. Now you're subscribed to the Locked On Rams podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, click subscribe right there. Now you get the Locked On Rams YouTube channel in your feed every single day. Why don't you go and do that? Take care of it. You'll be all set. You got your Rams content every single day. All right, so let's talk about Tutu Atwell. He was saying that he loves to show people up. He likes to prove that people underestimated him, that people didn't understand what they were looking at, and so on and so forth, and all of the things that you hear when guys get very upset about not getting a ton of action along the way. What he posted on Twitter was, I love being counted out, be it your own fans and family, but it only makes me go harder to prove you clowns wrong. And then the 100 emoji. then he continued, I came from nothing and I got it out of the mud. I'm going to make it this far for no reason. It's all going to pay off. Just the beginning, 100. And then the finger over the mouth emoji, like, shh, that one. Okay, good. I like a guy that's got a little fight. I do. And I hope that it works out for him. I hope that it works out for him here. I hope he becomes a great player and the Rams have another offensive option. I hope. And then there's the reality of it all. Here's a couple of different things going on here with Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell was the Rams' first selection in the draft last year in the second round. The Rams didn't have a pick until the second round. They chose Tutu Atwell. It was kind of one of those moments when they did it because he's small, very fast, but he's a smaller guy. And it was just kind of one of those things that made you go, it didn't seem to be the place where they needed to make a move necessarily. And yet that was the guy that they went and picked. He didn't get the ball, right? He had a couple of kickoff returns. He had a couple of punt returns along the way, pretty middling, quite honestly, if we're being honest. He didn't touch the ball once on offense all season long. And then relatively early in the season, he got hurt, and that was it. He didn't play the rest of the year. A couple of different things going on. Number one, I don't understand why this is one of the few. I understand that the Rams use the draft differently than everybody. We spent a lot of time talking about that. I understand. What I don't understand is why, when you do have limited draft picks, you take somebody that you really don't have a spot for. That you think about what the Rams had last year going into the season. The Rams wide receiver core before Tutu Atwell had even been selected included Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, and then ultimately they get Deshaun Jackson. That's 4 guys. Okay. And now I know when Deshaun Jackson leaves and you bring in Odell Beckham Jr., okay, where does Tutu Atwell fit into that? They couldn't use him in the return game. He was getting hit and he was getting hurt. Every time the man got knocked to the ground, you were worried whether or not he was going to get back up. They just re-signed Brandon Powell to a deal, who was pretty good for the Rams in the return game. Now, all of a sudden, Tutu Atwell doesn't have a spot on the field because you've got Kupp, Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson, potentially Odell Beckham Jr. Ben Skoranek has kind of jumped him in the pecking order of wide receivers. So Tutu Atwell is what, your 5th, 6th guy? He's small. He at least so far in very early portion of his career has been relatively injury prone. I don't know what he's expecting to get done. Look, I'm excited that he's kind of talking about it. I'm excited that he thinks that there's a path for him to shut people up along the way. That's kind of interesting. I don't know how, but I'm curious to see what it might be. But I just don't know how he thinks this is going to work out for him here. Now, it may work out for him somewhere else. Look, this is one of those things. So this is a baseball thing a lot of the times too, where maybe you are a wildly talented outfielder, right? But you look at a team like the Dodgers, let's say, well, Cody Bellinger's not going to come off the field. Mookie Betts certainly isn't going to come off the field. And then in left field, you've got Chris Taylor, you've got AJ Pollock. There's nowhere to go. So you're in the minor leagues and maybe you're just, tearing it up. There's nowhere, there's opportunity, right? You're going to have to go somewhere else. It's not that you can't play. It's just you can't play here. Maybe that's the situation with Atwell with the Rams. It's you can play. It's just, I don't know how you're going to get a chance to do it. There was always speculation too that maybe Sean McVay wasn't a super huge fan of the pick in the first place, that this may have been something that he didn't think that he needed along the way. It's something you hear through the grapevine. I don't know if it's true or not. But he didn't get used. And the path to the getting back on the field right now, you're going to stop throwing it to Cooper Kupp? No. You're going to stop talking Allen Robinson? No. Van Jefferson? No. If OBJ comes back, I just don't see where there are opportunities for him to get on the field. He didn't, let me say it again. He did not touch the ball on offense last year, not one single time. Now, he didn't play in 17 games. He only played in a handful of games, but your number one pick, first pick of your second round, the first time you say, with the pick, the Los Angeles Rams select, the first time they got to do that in the 2021 draft, Tutu Atwell was the name that got called. He didn't touch the ball once. I get it that you're not going to play a ton as a rookie maybe at that position, but my, oh my, 0 times? I think there's some information there. Now, maybe he knows something we don't, he being Tutu Atwell, that he's going to get back out there and get a chance to do it. But it sure feels like it's something that's going to have to be down the road for him to get an opportunity, especially with the addition of Brandon Powell. Brandon Powell, think about the special teams last year. The Rams, on their return game, both kick return and punt return, pretty mid, right? There was not a lot of explosive action in that part of their game When Atwell was back there. All of a sudden, Brandon Powell gets an opportunity. They put him on the practice team and bring him up. He has a long one against Jacksonville to open the game. He pops one against Minnesota for a touchdown. All of a sudden, the Rams have a little bit of a threat in the return game. That's not good news for Tutu Atwell. I really think that this may be something that you wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe move somewhere else sooner than later, just because there's just not an opportunity for the Rams. Not necessarily because he can't play. He just might not be able to play here. This may be too many good players for one position, and something's got to keep in mind. Robert Woods is in Tennessee. Okay, I get it. Robert Woods made a lot of money, and Robert Woods is, 10, 15, 20, whatever, however many factors better than Tutu Atwell is, however many factors more experienced than Tutu Atwell is. I get it. But you can only have so many guys on the roster. You really need a guy that you have no spot for. Be interesting to see how they shake that out and whether or not he's a part of their plan once they get into camp here coming up in a couple of months. But with all the good news, with all the offensive weapons that the Rams have, with Matthew Stafford showing what he's capable of, we know Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, I'm sure, is salivating at the chance to get the ball thrown to him from a competent NFL quarterback. Tyler Higbee, we know, is a capable player. Maybe OBJ comes back and he's ready to go by the time you get to Thanksgiving. Cam Akers in the backfield. These are a lot of offensive weapons, and Tutu Atwell, he's just not one of them. This was a guy that was their number one pick, first pick in the second round, right? Their first pick. It's a hard sentence to come up. He was the Rams' first draft choice in the 2021 draft. That's the best way of saying it. That's how I'm going to go with that. And he may never see the field for them, or at least not much more than what he did last year, which wasn't much at all. Okay, coming up, I want to talk about where the San Francisco 49ers are in their quarterback situation, because we've seen a lot of guys move around this offseason, and Jimmy G wasn't one of them. He's still there. He may be, in fact, the San Francisco 49er quarterback next season. What does that mean for the Rams and their chance to repeat as Super Bowl champions? That is coming up in just a second. But first, Built Bar. I told you guys earlier in the week, right? I had a day, had a bunch of people over, had a little bit of a party, and we catered some food in. And it was delicious, but maybe not the best choice in the world. And I've kind of reclaimed the good choices along the way with Built Bars, right? This is what you need to have around after maybe you have a day or two of some bad decisions. You need some good decisions that still taste really great, right? That's why Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Here's what it is. Simply put, they know how they know how to do the science to make these things good for you and taste good at the same time. I can't tell you exactly how they do it. I just know that they do it. For me, it's the coconut almond one. I need a little snack. I need a little pick-me-up, but I don't want to eat something that's going to make me feel crummy and make it just mentally. You're going to feel better knowing that you made a good choice. Built Bars, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. You're thinking, what does that mean? I'm going to tell you what that means. It means that's the good stuff. That's what you want. That's not nearly any of the bad stuff. Go look at it compared to some of the other snacks that you're having. You're going to choose Built Bar too. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, use the code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off at Built.com. Okay, so as I mentioned, free agency has been open for a while. Think about all the quarterback movement that we've seen. We've seen Deshaun Watson go from not playing for Houston to going to draft or getting 3 first-round draft picks from the Cleveland Browns. He's there. Russell Wilson, in a blockbuster, goes from Seattle to Denver. We've seen Mitch Trubisky, maybe not a blockbuster, but the Steelers go and get Mitch Trubisky. We've seen a whole bunch of quarterbacks move around this offseason. By the way, I think the Rams had a lot to do with that, doing what they did last year. And all of a sudden, boom, they win the Super Bowl because they went out and got a guy that I think was undervalued. They go and they pick him up. They win it. We know the rest of that story. But one of the guys that we almost were guaranteed to move was Jimmy Garoppolo. The Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. Remember, we wrote the nice letter, and whether it was online or the newspaper or whatever, it's like, thank you for all the time in San Francisco. I love you guys. Thank you for making my time here as special as it was. It felt like the goodbye letter of, that's what guys do when they've been in a place for a while. They say, peace out. Thank you for everything. And we'll see you down the road. The Niners spent the 3rd pick in the draft a couple of years ago on Trey Lance to come in and be their new quarterback. And it felt like that was inevitable. There was still the possibility, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, that maybe Tom Brady may come back to San Francisco, get out of Tampa. Instead, he decided to come out of retirement. He is in Tampa. Carson Wentz is another one. He's in with the Commanders. Matt Ryan is in Indy. There's been a ton of quarterback movement, and yet Jimmy Garoppolo is still there. It's interesting, right? Because Look, Jimmy Garoppolo is not one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. He's not one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league. He might not be one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the league, but what he is pretty good with those guys, right? He's a pretty good player on the San Francisco 49ers. Now, he's not going to light it up for 1,000,000 yards. He's not going to be a guy that has the ball. And I realize the irony of what I'm about to say. I'm fully aware that has the ball with a minute or so left, needs to drive the field to score a touchdown. He doesn't scare the you-know-what out of you. I know he did it against the Rams in Week 17, fully aware. But that's not what he is. It's not Aaron Rodgers. That's not Russell Wilson. That's not it's not even Kyler Murray. Again, it can be pretty scary back there. This is a guy that get a little pressure on him. If you can get the lead on San Francisco, Jimmy G doesn't send that cold shiver down your spine. That he just doesn't, right? But let me ask you, would you rather see Jimmy Garoppolo quarterbacking the San Francisco 49ers or a very green, very inexperienced Trey Lance doing it next year as a Rams fan? Yeah, me too. Give me Lance. In the limited time that we saw him, that did not look great. Now, I understand he's going to get better. I understand with some reps, he's going to get more polished, more experienced, less frantic, all of those things. But Jimmy G, this is the least scientific thing in the world. I don't want to hear about QBR or rating or any of these things. That dude just kind of has a way to figure things out and win some games. And he doesn't make a ton of mistakes when he's in the lead. We know that the Niners are kind of the Rams' nemesis. Never mind their rival. We get the San Francisco-LA thing that they competed against each other for a very long time. They ran into each other in the NFC Championship game. Never mind that. It's that thing, right? It's that thing that when you see him, he just kind of plays well against you, right? I don't know, not a big brother, little brother thing, but just that I can't beat this guy. For whatever reason, this guy seems to have my number. The Rams were able to get it done in the NFC Championship game. We all know that. But there were many times along the way with Jimmy Garoppolo where you're like, why can't we figure this guy out? Give me the inexperienced guy. Let Jimmy G go down the road. It's a weird dynamic to have a guy that isn't a statistical beast, that isn't a guy that scares you to death, but that you wouldn't mind seeing go. When he was leaving and Trey Lance was coming in, when that seemed to be a done deal, didn't bother me at all. Let's see what Trey Lance got. Maybe he brings something different. Maybe they have to throw the ball a little more. Maybe they become a little bit more explosive offensively. But the inexperience factor with him, I think, is real. Jimmy G, for all of his flaws, and there were several, dude wasn't scared. Dude wasn't a you-know-what. He's a pretty tough guy. He'll stand in there. He'll take a shot. He's not one of those guys that when he breaks the huddle late in the game, he's got the big eyes and he's looking around like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Right? I don't know what this is. Think about that chill factor that he had relative to a guy like Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's a better football player than Jimmy G is. Who would you rather see on the other side in a game that is meaningful? I think I'd rather see Murray. The Rams seem to get him panicked and sped up, and Jimmy G's he's a pretty cool customer. It's a weird mix of not necessarily the great player, but a guy that just kind of gives you that, I'd really rather not deal with this guy. Maybe it just has something to do with the fact that the Niners have given the Rams the business as often as they have over the last few years. Maybe if the Rams can win a couple of these, you start going, oh, it's Jimmy G. What's the big deal? It's fine. But happy. I'd love to see that guy leave the division. I'd love to see that guy go somewhere else. And the longer he doesn't move, the less likely he is to move at all. And I think we might see him in the NFC West a couple of times next year. Hopefully not. I'd like to see Jimmy G move down the road, but we'll see how it shakes out. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On the NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL quarterback Eric Crocker, cornerback Croc. Why do I keep thinking Croc was a quarterback? Cornerback Eric Crocker. They bring the NFL Draft to life every day. Insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It, too, is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you back here on Monday. We'll get into maybe some signings along the way. Maybe the Rams got some more stuff done. Maybe some other big-name players in the NFL have moved. Until then, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.